Okay, I don't know who needs to hear this podcast, but you need to stop trying to lose weight during cancer treatment. This is a very nuanced discussion. Every single person is going to be different, but in general, really need to stop trying to lose weight during cancer treatment. Now, generally, there's two people that come to me. There is those who have been very skinny and fit their whole life, and then they go into cancer treatment and they gain a bunch of fat. They become flabby, they become squishy, flabby. What's another word I've ever heard people say? I had a guy one time tell me that he has a woman's butt now. Um, he's like, my butt's just squishy. Anyways, um, that's one type of person. The other person is they have always been overweight or obese, and they go through cancer treatment. Their weight keeps going up, and they're like, okay, now it's time to lose the extra fat. Those are the two types of people I generally see, right? Regardless of which one you are, the answer during treatment should be you should not be intentionally looking to cut weight. And more importantly, you should not unintentionally be losing too much weight. Both sides of the spectrums are bad, and it depends on the type of cancer, it depends on the stage. In fact, when you are in treatment, I would rather you weigh the same constantly than lose weight during treatment. Here's the thing, especially for even if your cancer is associated with a higher risk of cancer with higher body fat percentage, I would still rather you control your weight, maintain your weight. Now, that said, I am a little bit tired because I'm running on 4 hours of sleep here. But so bear with me. Certain cancer types, losing fat will not impact your diagnosis. So, for example, there's certain types of breast cancers that having a little bit more fat is actually more beneficial to you than losing that fat in treatment. Now, I'm not talking about after the treatment's done. After the treatment, if you want to get back down to your pre-cancer weight, or you want to get back down to nice and toned and lean, that's absolutely fine. We're talking about in cancer treatment. If you're in cancer treatment, you should not be focused on trying to lose weight, especially if it's too much weight, unintentional too much weight. Now, what's too much weight? About 5% of your body weight. So that's about 20 pounds, to give you an example, depending on how much you weigh. 10 to 20 pounds or above, once again, depending on how much you weigh. But you don't want to lose too much weight too soon, because if you lose too much weight too soon, then you cut your muscle. And most people, just to give you an example, let's just talk about the general public. If I get Susie down the street, she wants to lose weight. She puts herself in a calorie deficit. You're going to have two people who put themselves in a calorie deficit and they're like, oh my gosh, it doesn't work. Calories don't work. They just were never in a calorie deficit. Now, then you have the other person who does understand that calorie deficit does work, but they cut their calories way too much. And instead of getting lean, they actually cut their muscle. So, which is not good. You don't want to lose weight to the point where you're losing muscle at the same time, because remember, especially in cancer treatment, muscle is what metabolizes chemo treatment. So if you have two people who weigh the same weight, one person has more muscle than the other person. The person who has more muscle has a better survival from cancer treatment and from the cancer, and also has less side effects because they carry more muscle than even if they weigh the same exact way. So you don't want to cut down on your ability to metabolize the cancer treatment. If you have less muscle, you're going to have more side effects. You're going to have more chemotoxicities, more neuropathy, more heart problems, more, loss of balance, there's more fatigue, etc. Go on with the list of side effects that come about. Muscle is what metabolizes the chemo treatment, so you do not want to cut into your muscle. Too much weight loss during treatment is really bad because it cuts into the muscle. That's unintentional, too much weight loss. I believe it's more than 5%. That's generally what medically they're looking for. Okay. So you don't want to do that. Now, could you cut less than that and be safe? Yes, that's okay. But cutting less than that is only about maybe At most 4 or 5 pounds. You should not be looking to like go on this diet to help you lose fat during cancer treatment. That is not how this works. So cancer treatment itself, right, puts you a bunch of stress and inflammation into your body. Well, guess what being in a calorie deficit does? It puts you in stress and inflammation in your body. Even if you get an athlete, let's just grab an athlete, an elite top peak athlete. If I cut his calories way too much or her calories way too much, he's going to feel more fatigued and less energy. His lifts are going to be worse. He's going to have less motivation, even if I get somebody in peak shape. So when you're in a frail state already and you cut your calories too much, whether intentionally or unintentionally or whatever it is that you're doing because of a certain diet, which all diets cut your calories, by the way, then you're running the risk of increasing your fatigue and you're running the risk of cutting away at your muscle. So you shouldn't have more than 4, maybe 5 pounds of fat loss during cancer treatment. To give you an example, this should be, let's see, about a quarter of a pound of fat a week. At the most, you should be losing a quarter of a pound a week. Monthly, that's about 1 pound a month, to give you an example. That's a very slow process. Very, very slow process. In fact, you can't really do that slow of a process unless you're almost unintentional about it. And what I mean by that is that you do everything else to stay healthy except intentionally cut your calories. You're just naturally doing the right things, getting more steps in, getting weekly cardio, getting your weightlifting. That on its own is going to help you cut maybe 2 pounds of fat within 6 to 8 months. So your weight might go from 150 to 148. That's not a huge. If you went from 150 to 148, you wouldn't be like, oh, look, I've lost 2 pounds. Yay, that's me. You should, but that's literally the type of slow fat loss you should be experiencing at all if you need to lose anything during cancer treatment. And that happens naturally, like I mentioned earlier, through just making sure you're getting your steps in, eating more fiber, getting more protein in, like just doing the right things. This is not a time to be focusing in on losing weight. You actually want to maintain weight as much as you can, and you want to lose as little as possible. Now, remember, we're trying to save muscle and we're trying to make sure you have enough energy. And to have enough energy, you have to eat enough. You have to eat well. So it takes some intentional focus away from the scale to focusing more on habits. And if you lose some fat during a habit focused season, then that's phenomenal. More power to you. That's incredible. As long as you're not losing muscle, that's okay. But doing the right things is not going to automatically cut your calories by a ton. In fact, it's just going to give you a little bit chips away at your calories. Weight loss is going to be very slow. I'm distinguishing the difference between fat loss and weight loss because weight loss is your scale number. Fat loss is loss of fat cells in your body. Your scale can go up and down, and that does not mean you lost fat or gained fat. Your day to day fluctuations, meaning when you step on the scale today at 6 a.m., for example, and then you step on the scale again at 10 and then 12 and then, whatever, 1 p.m., your weight's always going to go up and down, up and down throughout the whole day. If you weigh yourself constantly throughout the day, you're going to drive yourself nuts because you're going to get a bunch of different numbers. You're going to see 2 pounds up, 2 pounds down. You're going to stay the same. You're going to see 3 pounds down, 3 pounds up. You're going to be like, what the heck is going on? What you're seeing, it doesn't mean that you've gained fat and lost fat. That's not what's happening throughout your day. What's happening is that it's controlling your water weight. So the weight on the scale is the push of gravity on your body, basically onto the earth. That's just a very fancy way of saying it measures everything. It measures your bones. It measures your muscle, your fat, your organs, your water, how much food you had, not from a fat perspective, but if you ate, as an example, or let's say you drank, as an example, a gallon of water, you just added about a pound to the scale just by drinking water. Doesn't mean you gain 1 pound of fat. Listen to what I'm saying. The number on the scale fluctuates a lot throughout the day and a lot from day to day because it's not measuring your fat. It's measuring everything in combination. How do we know what your true weight is? You do what's called a dry weight. You weigh yourself in the morning before you've drank anything, before you ate anything, and after you've used the bathroom, because that's going to be on an empty stomach. It's that food in your stomach. As soon as you eat something, it's going to change the number. As soon as you drink something, it's going to change the number. As soon as you go to the bathroom, it's going to change the number. So you want to have a dry weight. The reason you're doing it in the morning, as soon as you wake up, is because you're on a fasted. You would have already digested everything in your tummy or in your intestines. So you're getting as close to an empty body as you can. Now we know what your weight between muscle, organs, bones, and fat is. That's a better starting point than to weigh yourself randomly throughout the day or even randomly throughout the week, because you can weigh yourself on a Monday and then on a Friday, maybe your weight didn't even go up, but you're going to notice a difference. Monday, you're going to be, 156, and then Tuesday, and then Friday, you're going to be, 153. You can see 3 to 4 pounds swing depending on the day, depending on your stress, depending on your hydration, what you ate, whether you worked out. All these things can change throughout the day to day. So you want to measure basically almost the average throughout the week to keep you consistent and know whether you're gaining or losing fat. That's just one measure. The other measure is going to be a picture. You need to have a before and after picture, taking pictures every 3 to 6 months, for example, to see where you're losing fat and where you're gaining muscle. Because what happens if you focus on the right things, you focus on the foundational steps of getting exercise, of getting enough movement in, of sitting less, moving more, etc. All the things that you already know. Eat more fiber, eat more protein, etc. If you focus on those things, your weight's going to, two things are going to happen. Either it's going to slightly start to go down, which is what we want. Remember, no more than 4, maybe 5 pounds of fat loss within a long time period, like 6 months, for example. Or your weight's actually going to stay the same and your pants are going to fit bigger. Your shirt's going to be, a lot bigger. Your bra is going to be less tight. All those are signs that you've lost fat and gained muscle. But remember, if you lost a pound of fat and you gained a pound of muscle, your weight's actually going to look the same. That's what's called body recomposition. So you actually need to be very patient during cancer treatment, not focus on the scale number, and instead focus on what your habits are on a day-to-day basis. Are you hitting the right targets? And you should have a target for fiber, you should have a target for protein, you should have a target for steps, and you should have a target for your exercises. If you're not hitting your targets for exercise, your fiber, your protein, your steps, the scale is the last thing you should be focusing on. Because at that point, if you lose any weight, it's because you're just slashing your calories, and then you're just going to hit a plateau and you're just not even going to be eating, and it's going to be, you're going to go into a malnutrition state, which is what you don't want to do. You don't want to further a malnutrition state. You want to make sure you're eating enough healthy foods, fiber and protein as an example, getting enough steps to help with that fatigue, getting enough steps to help with your bone mineral density, getting enough weightlifting sessions in, because you want to give your body enough stimulus throughout the week, enough stress, positive stress throughout the week to help build your body up, not tear it down. If you don't move, you don't get enough steps, you just cut back on your nutrition, you're going to slash your calories, you're going to put your body into a negative stress. You want to avoid that as much as possible. Through the positive habits that you're forming, you are going to automatically either maintain weight, but you're going to lose fat and build muscle during that time, or you're going to lose a little bit of weight, 3, 4, 5 pounds, something like that within a long time period, not in a month. If you're losing 5 pounds in a month, 4 pounds in a month, that's too fast, too soon. Over a long time period, you should lose, 3 to 4, 5 pounds. That's okay, because you're maintaining that muscle mass, and that's how you know you're losing fat. But you have to follow the right process. You have to be patient. You can't just focus in on, the scale, because the scale is going to drive you crazy, and it's the wrong focus. It's like trying to drive, an F1 or a NASCAR before you even know how to ride your bike. Like, we need to get on the bike first, make sure you're getting some motions in, make sure you're actually moving. It's actually a really bad analogy, but really good for the example of like getting some movement in and physical activity in, before you even focus on, riding a NASCAR. Um, Anyways, maybe that was not a good example, but whatever. Point of the story is, Set the right foundation first. Eating enough fiber, protein, steps, exercise, maybe even your sleep. Maybe if your sleep's out of whack, improve your sleep. All those things is what's going to help in the long term lead to fat loss after cancer treatment. And even during, you're still going to be able to see a little bit of fat loss, not much, but that's okay. And that's exactly what we want. Because at the end of the day, your goal, whether you admit it or not, is not a number. Now, I know that right now, at this very instant, you're hearing me, and you're thinking, no, I have a number in mind. That number is not really your goal. It's what you think that number is going to give you. You think if I reach that number, I'm going to look this way or I'm going to feel this way. Well, what if you actually feel and look better than at that number? So let's say you constantly weigh 155 as an example. And you're like, well, I used to weigh 126 when I was in college or high school, whatever it is. Well, what if you, instead of weighing 155, you actually weigh 150, but you have the muscle tone that you have and you feel even better than when you felt at 125 or 130? Are you going to say, no, I don't want to be 150 because, it wasn't that number? No, because that new number now gives you everything you want and needed. So the scale is not really the end goal. The end goal is to give you the tone, the leanness, the feeling better that you're actually looking for, and that might be a new or a different number. I'm not saying it is every single time, but many times it happens to be a much higher number because you're following the right steps. Now, if you set the foundation, it's going to make losing fat after cancer treatment a lot easier and a lot better. So focus on the foundations before or during cancer treatment before you try to lose, intentionally lose weight. Weight's going to come up and down. I don't want you to focus on that. I want you to focus on getting the right habits in because that's when it's going to help you live longer, stay healthier. Okay. Now, obviously, as always, if you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments below. I'm always happy to help. This is something that, I just had to get off my chest because so many people are focusing on the wrong things during cancer treatment. And the right things are fibers, proteins, steps, exercise, sleep. That's what you need. As always, I'm JC, clinical exercise physiologist and a cancer exercise specialist. If you have any questions, leave them below. And I'm always happy to help. Take care.